All right, people, let's get into it. I am Garrett, and today we are looking at another wireless transmission system. Now, full disclosure, they did send this to me for review, but that in no way is going to impact the honesty of my review. I will let you know exactly what I think about it, and to be honest, after playing with this for a week, it's pretty great. Today is another one from Hollyland, and this is the Mars 300 Pro. This kind of fits in their hierarchy between the Mars 300. This is the successor to that, and then right under the Hollyland Mars 400S. We looked at that one. If you want to see a link to that, that's up there. Before we dive into this, we are looking at the standard of the Mars 300 Pro. There are three different configurations for this. This one is 450 American. The one above this is 470. That one has a detachable rabbit ear antenna on the transmitter, and then there is one beneath this at 199 American or 200 American, where it is just the transmitter that we're going to be looking at today. There's a reason for each of those. We'll dive into that, but just so you know, we're looking at kind of the standard one today. So in the box, oh, so close. I almost had it. Inside we have the transmitter and the receiver here. They look identical pretty much in every way. Again, this one, like some of the others that we have looked at, have the internal antenna. So while these are full metal body construction on these top parts are plastic because that is the antenna. So this is the Mars 300 Pro. It's called that because, of course, it's professional. No, it's called that because it has 400 feet line of sight from the transmitter to the receiver, but it has 300 feet line of sight to the app. So this can transmit both to the receiver for your more professional monitors, but then also to two other or additional iOS or Android devices for a total of 3 different devices that it can transmit simultaneously. So we also have a USB Type-C cable here to standard USB. We have a 1/4-20 screw plate here, which is for the fronts of these. So again, you can kind of lay them down if you want. I like the fact that this one is toolless. We've looked at some other ones that have plates similar to this, but it requires like a hex key or a screwdriver. And the fact that this is toolless allows me to kind of switch between the two depending on the rigging that I need. And then we have a 1/4-20 thread to a hot shoe or cold shoe there. Starting with the transmitter, again, we have this really nice metal body here. At the bottom, we have 2 vents. I wonder if that's for active cooling, but there are 2 vents here at the bottom along with a brass 1/4-20 screw. Across the top is that antennae. You can see here it says TX. That is, so we know that it's the transmitter because they do look identical. Along this side here, there is an OLED display. There is a rocker slash button here that would be for our menu adjusting, and then of course the actual physical power toggle switch here. I like the configuration and layout of this because even in the Mars 400S, having the multiple button thing where you have to press and hold and do things, once you know that system, it's fine and it works well. But having rethought out how to navigate the menu structure in this thing, I think is a very good added benefit to it. The other thing with having the OLED display on the side instead of on the front is that if we mount this, you know, in any particular direction, we don't have to then be on top of the camera to look at it if we're laying it down flat. If we're going to be laying it on its face like this to get a narrow profile, we're not covering the control plate or having to look underneath the camera for it. Having it on the side really gives us the option that no matter how we mount it, we're really going to be able to see and access everything that we need to. On the other side, we have the HDMI ports. There's HDMI in and HDMI loop out. We've talked about this before. In my opinion, if you are going to be spending a significant amount of money on a wireless transmission system, anything over the $300 price range, you would really want to make sure that it has loop through capabilities. The reason for that, of course, is that you don't want dead points in your system. If you want to use an external monitor and a wireless transmitter, you're going to want to make sure that you can send that HDMI signal to both. And if there's no loop on this and there's no loop on your monitor, you're gonna have to choose which one you want. So really ensuring that all of your devices have this loop through capability, monitors and transmitters, is going to ensure that no matter how you configure your camera rig, you're never going to be without that video signal. Underneath that, we have the USB Type-C cable. This is going to be for powering this if we didn't want to power it off of the battery. And then of course, the battery plate on the back here. Again, completely metal. Looks like there's a bit of a heat sink here on the back, and then this same metal ejection button here that we saw on the 400S. So that is the transmitter. The receiver looks identical in every way. We have the same OLED, same menu layouts. We have the same vents across the thing, the same brass quarter 20 on the bottom. It looks, for all intents and purposes, the exact same. The only difference here is on these two ports, we have both of them as HDMI outs. So we have HDMI out 1 and HDMI out 2. I've seen this on one other transmitter in this kind of ballpark here. And what really is cool about this is that you can then, of course, send it to two physical monitors from one receiver. So if you have a client-facing monitor and then the AC also needs a monitor, they're pulling focus wirelessly, you can then do both of those things off camera without having to have them interfere with one another. Same if you're running DIT or any other video village type things that people are going to need to have access to what is being seen. All right, let's now get these things connected and powered on. With this pointed forward, and by pointed forward, I mean the antenna pointed towards the same direction as the lens, will ensure that your HDMI ports are on the same side for your camera and the transmitter. So for this, I use these. These are thin or slim cables. There's a company called Monoprice that makes them, along with some others. I'll put a link in the description below, but I like them because the cables themselves are thin. They're really easy to bend, lightweight, and you can get them in kind of a whole series of ends. So this is of course the micro HDMI to full HDMI. This is the G85, which unfortunately has micro HDMI out. So I will plug this into the HDMI in. I will then put this into the HDMI out. And again, I don't have a whole bunch of cables everywhere. It's really kind of slim, streamlined. It doesn't add a whole lot to my kit. So that's that. Now for the receiver, we want to obviously plug this into a monitor. And for that, we are going to use the FeelWorld F5 Pro. This thing's unreal. We'll talk about this in another episode, but just to give you an idea here on the back here, I could just take this, lock it in, and now this thing has power off of the monitor. It's insane. So again, with this, the receiver has the HDMI ports on the same side. I'm going to use another one of these slim HDMI cables. I like them. They're short, they're sweet. I'm going to plug one into the HDMI out on the receiver and the other into the HDMI in on my monitor, like this. So now I have everything plugged in and set up. Okay, with everything powered on here, we can see on this display the information here across. On the top left, we have the signal between devices. So we can see the signal strength that we are getting between the two devices. Directly below that, we will see that there is that fan that is spinning. That lets us know that it is being actively fan cooled. And it is so quiet that you really can't even hear it when you're sitting in the room. Like I can't hear it. So it's working great. I wouldn't even worry about that. Underneath that, we then see the voltage or the power that's coming in. It's getting 7.9 volts off of this battery here. Then there is what channel we are on, which clearly here we are on channel 4. And then below that, it will show you the video signal that we are sending. So in this case, it is 1080p at 24. This can send 1080p up to 60 frames per second. To access the menu on here, you want to push and hold the menu for 3 seconds, and that's going to take us to the main screen of our menu here. And then from here, we can use the toggle to toggle up or down to take us between those things. So the first one, when you open it up, is going to be the Wi-Fi password. By default, the Wi-Fi password is set as 1 through 8, like most of these are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is for connecting to the Wi-Fi using one of the smart devices and the Hollyland app. We'll get to that in just a moment. The next is pairing. This is, of course, if your receiver and transmitter are not talking to one another. I've never run into that being an issue, but if they ever did stop communicating, that is how you would go through and repair them. Set them both into pairing mode, they'd find each other, reconnect, and it would be fine. Below that, we then have fan control. This is where we can set the parameters of the active cooling in this. I would just leave this alone. I cannot see a world in which you're going to hear that and it's going to affect your audio. But if for whatever reason you are in a very audio sensitive environment, you do have the control to adjust the intensity of that fan or whether or not that fan works at all. Underneath that is the version number. This is going to be the firmware that it's rocking. You can update the firmware wirelessly using the Hollyview app. And then finally, we then have the exit. To press and enter any of these menu options, we simply just push in on that menu button. Now, to change channels between the two devices is very simple. You would just use the rocker here and go up or down to change the number, and then when you find the one that you want to try, you press in on the menu button. Now, if you do this on the transmitter, it will automatically sync that to the receiver and change that channel over for both, so you don't have to worry about it needing to be paired on both sets of devices. So with that said, I'm going to mount this back on the camera here, and we'll get into the app. To connect your smart device to the wireless transmitter using a smart device like my iPhone here, the first thing that you want to do is to connect to the Wi-Fi signal that it is sending out. This is before you open up the app or any of that kind of stuff. And you can find that signal by, it'll be HLD because Hollyland _ and then whatever the serial number is of this device. And you can find that number right here on the top of this OLED display. The 7-digit number that you see across is going to be the number on the Wi-Fi SSID here. So I'm going to tap that, and then it's going to ask me for the password, and in this case I'm going to type in 1 through 8 because that is the default password here. So once I'm connected to that Wi-Fi signal, I will then open the Hollyview app, and when I do, the first thing that we'll see is connect to the Mars 300 Pro. So I'm going to tap connect here, and it is going to automatically load in, and it is going to display the same thing that it is displaying here. And like with the 400S, there is no additional latency on the device. It works the exact same way as on a traditional monitor. Now, this does boast a latency of 0.08, or, you know, what is that, 80 milliseconds, which is pretty incredible as far as speed goes. Now, Panasonic cameras do have incredibly latency-ridden HDMI outs. That's just kind of part of the HDMI in the camera, not the wireless transmission system. But with my GH5S and my G85, I have no problem pulling focus, and you can kind of see here that if I go here, there you go. There's a little bit of the latency there, but it's less than a second of latency even on a slow HDMI out like the Panasonic cameras, and these display at the exact same rate. Now, we have discussed this before, but I want to reiterate that the Hollyview app is the single most robust smart device app I have ever used for a wireless transmission system that works, you know, in displaying images to a smart device. In so that you can see the tools here across the bottom. We have waveforms, we have histograms, we have focus peaking, we have zebras, we have framing aspect ratio customization, we have magnification, so we can do a 2x pop, make sure that we're in focus. We have false color, monochrome, and you can even load 3D LUTs. Across the side here, we can take a reference image, we can take reference video directly on this device recording the screen, so then that way we can kind of have playback immediately on device should we want that. If you tap the 3 dots in the corner, you can see here the Wi-Fi password, all of this stuff here. This is where you can customize the password if you don't want it to be 1 through 8. And then down here at the bottom, you can actually select what album you want things to be saved to. So if you take that reference photo or reference video, you have a place that it's all stored in together, which I think is a pretty unbelievable deal. And if you have everything set the way that you want, you can push this lock here in the corner and it will then hide all of the tools and everything for you. So then if I touch the screen and things, I'm not going to be changing things unless I then unlock and have access to these tools. I don't know of another app for previewing that has no latency in comparison to the receiver, in addition to having all of these professional tools available. At the beginning, I talked about the fact that there are 3 different configurations configurations for the 300 Pro. The 300 Pro comes in standard, which is this. This is the integrated antenna on the transmitter and the receiver. There is a higher level or an enhanced version, which actually has detachable antennae here for signal strength and that kind of thing. So if you are going to be pushing the limits of the distance for your shoots, it might make more sense for that, and especially because it's only $20 more. Understandably, $450, $470 is out of some folks' price range. But one of the things that I really appreciate that Hollyland has done is added that third tier or entry level tier, which is going to just be the transmitter, and that's $1.99. So for $200, you still get all of the functionality that the transmitter has to offer without necessarily needing the physical receiver. If you guys have watched this channel before, you know that I'm a big fan of modularity. I'm a big fan of folks making things that work for all sorts of people, that scale with people as they need it, and the Mars 300 Pro does a very good job of that. There isn't much that I don't like about this. Really, the only thing that I wish this had that it doesn't is a second one of those little screw plates, so that way I could have it for both. But with this F5 Pro and the way that it automatically connects to the back of the monitor here, I don't really need that. More on that monitor later. But I hope you found this helpful, and if you did, do me a favor, give this video a like, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and if there's something specifically that you want me to take a look at, comment it down below. You know that I love gear, and I would honestly love to look at anything that you guys would find interesting. So let me know on that. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.